Unfortunately, early on into the summer, the pontoon covers on my little Naiad ripped, and I'm actually still waiting on new covers for the boat. But this has meant I've spent the majority of the summer just shore diving Makara. This has meant it's been a lot harder to actually get footage because often my camera goes flat halfway through a dive, and when you're shore diving there's no way to change the battery. So this has meant this video has taken quite a bit longer to get all the footage I've needed to make, but here it is. Over these past couple of months, I've pretty much solely focused on learning how to spear Wellington snapper. I've talked a little bit about Wellington snapper before on the channel, but basically they behave like a completely different species to the snapper up north people in New Zealand are used to spearing. Essentially they're a weed-line species here, and they're only really in spearfishable depth for a couple of months while the water's at its warmest. Burley is really important for them, and especially kinnaburley is the key to them. Even though Wellington isn't a very sharky place, you need to expect to see sharks when you're using burley in these warmer months. In fact, the first snapper I got a shot at was pretty early into the season, right near the start of December, and the viz was really terrible, and I wasn't actually even looking for snapper. I just had this burley down hoping to find John Dory or something on it, and as I got down there I saw this 7-gill shark down there, and I decided to just swim out and try to get some footage of it, and then looked over to my left and there was just a snapper sitting there. Unfortunately, I missed the shot, and I'll blame it on the bad viz and not being hard on the bottom. I was pretty gutted about missing this fish because it would have been pretty cool to pick up a snapper in early December. Since snapper don't really like the sight of divers, getting off the beaten path is a hugely important part of shooting them. This means if you're shore diving, just walking a bit further than everyone else is willing to walk, and if you can dive deeper, this helps a lot as well. Here's a clip from one of the first snapper I speared this season, and you'll see I did quite a few things wrong, like throwing out the gun over the edge before properly checking it. While not a very big snapper, I usually consider any legal Wellington snapper a good fish, since we don't get as many of the big fish down here like they do up north. Also bear in mind that our size limit is a bit smaller at 27 centimeters, but I try not to shoot any fish around this size since it's pretty small. This clip is from Carpety, and it's the only snapper I shot out Carpety. I think this was actually the only day I got to dive out Carpety this season. It was really quiet this day, and I think that's because there's barely any current around. Generally speaking, the more current the better, so you're looking for the kind of current that's hard to swim against. In this video, I'm sticking my head and my gun out way too far from the cover, but this time it didn't seem to matter. Here we are back at marketer, and this is a better example of hunting snapper without making too many mistakes. At this stage in the season, I was also starting to see better sized fish around as well. The final piece of advice I'd give about shooting snapper is that if you're hunting them, you can't shoot any other species. If you do, you'll spook your burley and you likely won't see any other fish on it for the rest of the day. In this clip, I'd literally just set up the burley and I went down and saw a John Dory on it. Considering John Dory are one of my favourite eating fish and I couldn't see any other snapper on the burley, I found it too hard to pass up on it. But if you watch the clip, you'll see there was a snapper just right there on the burley that I didn't notice until after I'd taken the shot. This wrecked my burley, and after a few dives of checking it and not seeing any more fish, I had to go swim to find a new spot to set up. Later in the season, I started to see crazy amounts of snapper show up and some much bigger size ones as well. These kind of sights I never really expected to see in Wellington. This dive, there were heaps of panties on the burleys that you might not be able to see because of the viz, and some much better fish out in the distance. I couldn't close the distance to the bigger fish, so decided to back out and come back down and try it again. size in Wellington are really special, so I try to use all of the fish, frying the fillets, smoking the frames, and I often take the jaw out to mount. This next fish was an interesting one. The current had dragged the burley out from the ledge into the open, and I just went down and then swam over the burley to check what was on it, and just in time I noticed there was 2 good fish there. So I got hard against the bottom, and then just for a couple of seconds I looked down at the ground to avoid eye contact. This was enough for one of the fish to turn and come close enough for me to take a shot. Just after I took the shot, I noticed there was actually a 7-gill shark down there as well, and I think fish can get a bit dumb when there's sharks around, and this might have explained why I was able to get this fish. This clip is of the final snapper I shot this season, and it's actually my biggest Wellington snapper to date. Just as I got down to the top of my ledge, there was this kingfish hanging around there. And I was actually pretty worried he was going to spook whatever fish were over on the burley. And unfortunately he swam out over the ledge before I'd even got the chance to check it. But this didn't spook any fish, and as I peered over the ledge, among other fish, there was this big moocher just milling around down there. It seems like the Wellington snapper spearfishing season is coming to a close now, with their numbers starting to thin out. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.